Welcome back to the Missing Maura Murray podcast. I'm Tim, joined here with Lance. This is part 2 of the 12-year anniversary of Maura's disappearance episode that we're doing.
Yeah, and if you listen to part 1, there's not a whole lot more to say because it would be a little bit redundant on our part. We really started to get into that area towards the end of part 1's episode. We got into kind of the soul of the area, which I a little bit unexpected, but I enjoy talking about. If we wanted to kind of venture out into anything that was kind of paranormal, that would be some territory that I would feel pretty comfortable exploring, because there is a soul up there. There is something going on up there, something within the mountains and within the woods.
It's hard to deny the feeling that you get. And I was telling someone recently that it's kind of like that feeling you get when you're in Salem, Massachusetts. I know a lot of our listeners have never been to Salem, but those who have, you'll understand that, you sort of get an eerie feeling, like, because some bad shit went down there.
Yeah, and you know that, exactly. There's some resonance of some unhappy, there's some resonance, especially in Salem. There's some resonance of some unhappy energy going on, some negative energy in the air. Something about the Whites is how big it is when you drive through the gateway of the White Mountains, which was that area of the highway that we talked about, where you start to see those swooping mountains. Strangely enough, if you're not familiar with that area, you start to get a little claustrophobic, which is odd that you get a little claustrophobic in this very big place.
So we wanted to remind you to sign the petition if you do want the FBI to take over this case. That is in our show notes. So please, Lance and I have both signed it. So please, we invite you to sign it as well. We spoke at length about the petition a few episodes ago. The only thing I want to say is that, Fred Murray wants you to sign it. He asked you at the beginning of last episode to sign the petition. So it's up to you. Fred Murray asked you to sign it.
Right. It's almost like if you're listening to this and you're invested emotionally, you take your time listening to this, and you take your time looking at the maps of the area and looking at as much material as you can. It is a very proactive step that you can take to make some sort of change. Where do I find this petition again?
The petition is on change.org, and you can search Maura Murray there, or you can just follow the link in the show notes. And also, before we get rolling on more of these clips from up in Haverhill, New Hampshire from February 9th, we just wanted to mention the next couple of episodes that we're planning. We have recorded a fantastic interview, or really sort of kind of like a roundtable discussion, I guess, with Aaron and Justin from the Generation Y podcast.
Yeah, they get some pretty good theories. And what I liked about talking with them is that they back up their theories with a lot of logic. Not a lot of bull crap. A lot of logic comes out of how they deduce what their theories are.
Absolutely. So check out that podcast. It's called The Generation Y, and we'll be bringing that chat to you next episode. Also want to let you know about this Monday night, March 7th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We are going to have another live show. This time it is going to be John Smith, James Renner, and Clint Harding on with Lance and I to debate their theories on what happened to Maura. And if you cannot make the live show, it will be uploaded as a normal episode of this podcast.
We found that we got a lot of good feedback from that live episode, and we found that we got a lot of really solid focus. There was a lot of good theories, and a lot of work was put into like follow-up work from our listeners and from the guests that we had on last time. Every once in a while, talking this thing through and kind of bringing it down to earth a little bit, just to keep it from not blowing up or becoming a beast that we can't handle. Just kind of grounds us all.
With that, let's start playing some of these clips from the Mountain Lakes Lodge up in Haverhill, New Hampshire from February 9th, 2016, where John Smith gives a presentation about his findings in his investigation of the Maura Murray disappearance.
Another weird thing is that we just came across is that this is what this form is for here. This poster here is the whole report. It goes from 6:02 p.m. until 12:59, okay, that night. So in that timeline, there are 4 calls that are missing. They're not redacted, they're missing, okay? 3 of those calls are between the 6:02 and 7:49. Is that convenient? Because it's right between the time that Maura went missing. So that's very, very convenient that those 4 calls are missing. The last call that's missing is down here after 11:03 p.m.
I have a question about the four missing calls
Okay.
on the log. I assume those are from the Hanover log that was never released.
Well, that's the thing that we don't know.
Would Hanover's log from that time period?
I doubt it. I mean, Hanover's a bigger,
So it seems
more
like there
populated town than Havel, so you would think Havel would have more calls
So you
than
think
that.
Hanover would have more than just those four?
Those 4.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And if they were not for us to be seen, again, redacted, that just means blacked out everyone. Just if no one knows what redacted means, when you get a sheriff's report, you'll see things in here that have been just blanked out, you know, just with a big black marker so that you can't read people's names or their address. And that's what would have been done in this case, was they would have just blacked it out. It wouldn't just be missing. And the convenience of the time that those 3 calls are missing is the 6 to 8 o'clock. And Maura's accident, we believe, happened at 7:05 per scanner calls that were heard by what I have is at least 2 or 3 witnesses now who have stated that they heard that the car had slid off the road on Swiftwater Road, and then that the person had left in the private vehicle. To me, that means somebody had slid off the road and got back in their car.
And that it was a female.
And that it was a female.
Yeah, that it was
Yes.
a female that
And
went
it
off
was a
the road.
female. And the people that knew about this were worried about somebody else that was coming, so that they were concerned about when they heard the call. They were concerned and perked up their ears to listen to the scanner.
I find these interesting, Lance. We met a few of the people at the lodge on the 9th who had said that they were the ones who heard the scanner call. They said that they remember it clear as day, and because they thought it was their friend, and turned out to not be, obviously. But this person said that they remember cooking dinner, and I said, "What were you cooking?" And they answered me immediately. And they told me that this person was really remembered the smell of those potatoes while they were cooking them, while the scanner call happened. Sense memory kicked in this moment. So I really do believe this person, absolutely. But again, with Witness A, it's I don't know where this leaves us.
Right, and whether or not it was just because there was another accident doesn't mean that it was Maura. And it's great that they have excellent memory when it comes to putting themselves in a place where this happened, but why can't we get that memory with other things in this case that actually aren't leading into more theorizing about the case? It frustrates me a little bit because it adds another layer on that I'm going to say probably doesn't have anything to do with it, but you can't ignore it.
Okay, and here is the next clip of John Smith.
The biggest thing is, Maura disappeared in the blink of an eye. How did she do that? That is the big question.
John, did you find out any more about the involvement of state police with Officer Monahan at that point in time?
The only thing that we know is that John Monahan, New Hampshire State Trooper at the time, was on duty that night, and that he had showed up at the scene. On Wednesday, when Strelson, the New Hampshire State Police Commander, came down to talk to the police officers and stuff, he told them and the family, he said that, we didn't know anything about your daughter going missing until this morning. And we find that very telling as well, as why John Monahan had stopped by the scene, offered assistance, actually said that he helped search some with Butch Atwood. Why did he never sign off at the scene?
Did come across it because he was en route to, like...
That's a possibility, but protocol is to sign off. If you
Right.
sign off, especially, I mean, in an accident, if you just stop, or whatever, it's no big deal, is everything okay? But if you stop and offer your assistance, it's an incident call for the New Hampshire State Police. That is not anywhere on the records as well. There is nothing by John Monahan. So, again, we want to know, why isn't that reported? Thanks for bringing that up, Brian. I almost forgot that point. But why are they adamantly saying that, that there was no New Hampshire State Police involvement until Wednesday? It's another part of this case that portrays a cover-up and lies to me. And, like I said, I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened. But the inconsistencies, the inaccuracies, the statements by witnesses that they don't make any sense.
So this is an interesting one, Lance. This is something we've heard about for a while now, but I'm not sure that we've ever really touched on it on the podcast. But John mentions how there was a New Hampshire State Trooper who may have actually been first on the scene, John Monahan. And this is something that Fred Murray has talked about recently as well, because a couple days later, the New Hampshire State Police had denied that they were ever on the scene and that they had ever even heard of Maura's accident.
Yeah, and this is something I know it'd be unfair to the listeners. It would be unfair to the case in general if I started talking about it, if either of us started talking about it, because this is information that has kind of been out there, but there's like very little detail about it other than what you just said. So it's something that we really have to look into more to get some accurate details before we can speak to it. But yeah, what you said was what we know at this point.
And let's roll our next clip.
There's pictures of the car that after it was parked at the Troop F barracks that the headlights are falling out of it and stuff, and that was actually after. People were like, oh, how did this happen? Well, it was actually after the reconstructionists had gone up and pulled stuff out to actually see what was damaged behind it. The car was drivable. Everybody needs to know that. The car was drivable. Fred jumped in that car after he pulled the rag out and it started right up. Yeah, it was running like crap, but it started right up.
Now, that was the day after the accident. That was being said all over Swiftwater.
What's that?
That the car was drivable.
Yeah.
And that why didn't she just drive it away?
Mm-hmm. And that was said by not only the EMTs, two EMTs, but also by a couple of people on the fire department. Said, I don't know why she just didn't drive away.
Right.
Another interesting point raised at the lodge here about Maura's car possibly being drivable. I mean, obviously it was drivable to get to the spot that it was at, and I presume at this point that it didn't occur, that the damage didn't occur at the spot. So yeah, I guess when you hear it like this, it's like, all right, well, why didn't she just drive away?
Well, here's the thing. Her airbags had gone off. She was right in front of a house that probably had its lights on, and then Butch shows up. She just gets into an accident. She has to have time to process it. She might have been stuck in the snow. I mean, it's a Saturn, that just gets put into a, some sort of snowbank. Airbags go off. I mean, maybe as she's trying to drive away, Butch shows up. I mean, people are making it up to be like she had a half hour to sit there and dig her car out and try to drive. I honestly, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way when I heard that statement. Why didn't she just drive away? Oh, I mean, have you ever been in an accident where your airbags go off in front of a house? She's thinking, Mm-hmm. We were talking about this in past episodes where, the window of time that had to happen for her to run away or be abducted is so short. I don't think anybody can make a decision that fast. Or even if she is making that decision, just the circumstances around the accident itself, she's not going to be able to just drive away. The snow, the house, the Westman's house with the lights on. I'm assuming the lights were on. And then Butch shows up pretty soon after.
He shows up in her car, lights and emergency lights were not on.
Right.
That's what he said. So, yeah. So
No, when I said lights on, I meant lights on in the house.
Yeah. No, I know. But I'm just saying for her, as far as what she was doing at that moment, it sounds more like she was hiding out at that moment in her car, thinking, as you put it, trying to make a decision.
Yeah, you got to make a decision. Yeah. I mean, you look at the damage on the car. I don't know if my first thought is, can I drive away? My first thought is probably going to be, I don't even know what my first thought is. It's, you got to start thinking. The amount of time that it's taken for us to talk about this, Butch has already shown up.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because what are you going to do? You're going to bring it to a mechanic? You're going to, if you have to deal with the tow, maybe you have to deal with the police, which means maybe you're getting arrested. And it's a slippery slope in that situation. And what mechanic is open at that moment? You can't exactly just call AAA and hope that the tow truck gets there before the police, especially, and we know there's no service. It is really, I don't know what I would do either when you put it like that.
Yeah.
And this next clip is a powerful one. It is the words that Fred Murray gave John Smith to read at the lodge at this very point. And he mentions a lot of these things in the audio that we played at the very beginning of this podcast episode. But this is further proof that John Smith and Fred Murray really are buddies. I mean, maybe buddies is strong, but they hang out. I mean, they're
associates.
And John Smith is not lying. Like, for all the emails we got, months ago about how we can't trust this guy. He's lying to us about everything. And, this is really confirmation. So I got to imagine this feels good for John, that it is really now confirmed to probably every listener out there that he really does know Fred Murray.
On Sunday, Fred was at my house for 2 hours, and the misconceptions that people have about this family drive me crazy. There is no way in hell that someone that knows that their daughter is missing, knows why they're missing, or had anything to do with it, would spend 12 years trying to get the FBI involved, would spend 12 years looking for their daughter, would put this whole thing on for 12 years, taking over their lives. I know, it took over mine. There's no way that they would do that to try and cover for something for 12 years. And the biggest point of the whole thing is, people accuse the Murrays of having something to do with this. Why would you want to invite the FBI? Because they're the people who are going to take you down. So it makes no sense. So these statements were given to me on Sunday by Fred. We had a great 2-hour conversation. I've really grown to like the man a lot. He's very honest and funny as hell. He's really funny.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's great. He's a character. He's a character for sure. Told me something about his 40th birthday with a bedpan on his head. So, just things that, that make you laugh. Okay, reasons for FBI takeover. And we want to make sure that that's really out there, that this is a takeover by the FBI if it is done. We don't want them to be involved now because we feel that there's such corruption that we don't feel that working with them would give this as much of closure as having them take it over completely. So Fred's reasons for FBI takeover. There was a state police officer at Maura's accident scene on Monday night on Route 112, which is a state police patrolled state highway. On Wednesday, the commander of this officer's unit, Troop F, said that Wednesday was the first that they had heard of the accident. How can that be? They had an officer at the scene that night. What did this guy do? Nobody knows because there is no report. His own outfit has no idea what their own officer did that night. Everyone else who was there that we can identify has said what they did and saw, except for the state police officer, who still hasn't been heard from to this day. And my daughter has been missing ever since. No wonder they won't release any records. Only the FBI can make these guys talk. We have a witness who reported seeing Haverhill Police SUV 001 at the accident at about 7:35. Cecil Smith arrived at 7:46 in the Haverhill Police sedan 002. Who was in the Explorer SUV 001? Where was it at 7:46 p.m.? Why isn't it in the report? What did this officer do My daughter has been missing ever since, and these guys aren't saying. Only the FBI can make them talk. A woman came to our motel at the Wells River Motel and told us that she had heard police officers arguing about jurisdiction in this case at the scene. Who were these officers? Could they have been the state police officer and the mystery driver of 001? How did they resolve their differences? The sign for the next town, where there is no local police coverage at night, is visible 200 yards to the east of the accident. Beyond that sign, the highway is the state police officer's responsibility. Maura didn't go west, so she had to have gone east. The local responders didn't go east past that sign. Where did the state policeman go? What did the state policeman do? My daughter has been missing ever since. Only the FBI can make this guy talk. And here's the clincher. I've seen 3 different police dispatch reports for the time frame of the accident. How can the same event have 3 official different versions? These folks aren't offering any explanation for this. Only the FBI can crack this local enigma because everyone involved is on the mute, hoping this case blows over and goes away. The police will be successful in just sitting on Maura's case for the next 50 years until we're all dead, unless the FBI takes it over, because the FBI is the only force that can pierce the local blue brotherhood. Please help me get them involved. They are my daughter's only chance. Thank you, Fred Murray. And as Fred was walking out my door, he said, and I want to tell you something by a Roman philosopher from about 2,000 years ago, Juvenal, who said, for who is to guard the guards themselves? And I think that's a very good way to end with what we've just discussed today.
I have to say, John really does paint a very dramatic picture of how that meeting went down with him and Fred when Fred gave him that statement, as if Fred stood up and they shook hands or hugged, and Fred turned to the door and said, oh, by the way, John, who is to guard the guards themselves?
Well, that's probably how it really happened.
I mean, it could be, but I mean, you can't tell me that John doesn't do a little creative licensing with that.
I don't know. I can't say that for sure.
But he paints the picture, right? You picture John sitting at the table, the smoky room, and Fred's leaving, and he turns around and says that line. I know that line was said because we've heard Fred say it. I'm just putting a little reality to it. I think John might have painted that with a generous creative brush.
I think this is our experience, Lance, being a bizarre one. It was something that we talked about earlier, and some of this feels surreal and seems very surreal. Well, that probably really happened the way that he described it, nearly exactly, I would say. And it's just surreal to hear that that's really what happened.
I mean, you and I were sitting in the motel room in Lincoln, and if we were to tell anybody what happened at that time with the emails, the time frame, everything that went down, they'd say, okay, they're painting it with a creative brush. It didn't happen like that. And I know it happened like that. So yeah. Perhaps I stand corrected on this.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying, yeah, I was in the hotel room that night too, and that seemed like an out-of-body experience.
Either way, pretty powerful words there.
And he's not really implying necessarily anything, just that people need to be responsible for their actions.
If it's law enforcement or it's anybody,
right? It could be us. He could be
held accountable.
Exactly.
Be held accountable. I mean, if you're talking about podcast hosts, who's to guard us? Anybody.
Exactly. Who's anybody other than us? Who's to say that we're not lying about everything we talk about?
Exactly. You put yourself in charge of something, or you become the voice of something. It could be law enforcement. It could be podcasts. It could be the CEO of a company. You put yourself in charge of it. You have a responsibility to the people. Who's giving you the, who's reining you in at that point? pretty powerful words.
And I like how John ends this, because it's funny. He ends it saying, "Oh, well, I think, this is a good note to end this on." And we still have about a half hour more of discussion, which is great. But it was this additional half hour was sort of jump started by James Renner, who was at the lodge on the 9th as well. And we can just play what he said. It was really immediately right after John reading Fred's statement.
And I just want to say, James Renner showed up. He drove to the lodge. Apparently, he did some investigating or some follow-up on his own afterward. John and James have exchanged information in the past to help the case. There is a professional respect, maybe, and I definitely don't mean to use the word respect. There is a professional agreement between the two. And James showed up and extended his hand to John, at which point John said, "Hi, James," and turned around and continued to collate whatever papers he had in front of him, refusing to shake James's hand. So we were a little bit on edge with what was going to happen there.
Let's roll the clip.
John,
Relax again for a little bit.
you were with Fred for 2 hours on Sunday.
On Sunday, yes, sir.
Did you ask him what happened with the $4,000 he had on his person the weekend before Maura disappeared?
I'll tell you that Fred is old school. He carries a lot of cash with him all the time. I asked him, "Were you going to buy a car?" Yes, they were going to buy a car. That was their mission. What happened to that? I don't know. How come we didn't buy a car? We didn't get to it.
Or why he took out from...
Well, and why, I said, well, where'd you get the money? Well, we took the money out of accounts to whatever to go and be able to purchase this car, because he didn't have like $4,000 in his pocket at the time. So when Maura disappeared or whatever, he still had that $4,000. And as far as I know, this is what I was told by the family. I do not know the account number. I don't know if it is in an account, but I was told that the $4,000 was put into an account that Maura would have access to if by chance she was able to get to it, because he knew that she only left town with $280, which she had taken out of her account. And to his knowledge, that's all she had. So, you can't go rent a condo with $280. Did Fred give Maura this $4,000 and they're not telling me the truth? I don't know. I can't tell you that, because I don't know. I mean, I thought that he was being honest with me, but...
One last question. Did you have an opportunity to ask him what Sarah Alfieri told him? Sarah is one of two of Maura's close friends at UMass who told the quote-unquote real story to Fred, and she promised never to repeat it.
Right. And I do not know the answer to that. That's a good question, because I've asked what was said. And it's definitely a good point that you make, because unless, like I say, what happened in Mass before she left is definitely important if it was her at the corner. If it was her at the corner, that's the biggest thing. But what happened to make her leave is definitely a big thing. Now, what Sarah might have told them, I don't know, because that hasn't been given to me in 12 years. And I think it's an embarrassment. That's the only thing I can say, is it's something embarrassing that Maura had maybe got herself involved in that was embarrassing to the family. And that's the only thing I can think of, is why they just wouldn't want to say what it is, Are you satisfied now with the Petrit Vasi thing, as far as her hitting him?
I'm never 100%, after Ariel Castry, I'm never 100%.
True, because that's the good point that you just made, because Maura could still be alive and being held captive someplace, because we don't know. So.
I'm 99.9% sure that the Vasi accident didn't have anything to do with.
What are you talking about?
So, a few nights before Maura disappeared, she was working security at a desk at Melville Hall at UMass.
Yeah.
She had a breakdown of some sort. This is Thursday night. Around the same time as her breakdown, there was a hit and run on just outside of campus. A young man, Petrit Vasi, was struck. He ended up in a coma for several months. It's always been rumored that perhaps that's what caused the damage to the Saturn and what motivated Maura to flee. We have been trying to get the records from Amherst Police for years. They finally released them a week or two ago. And we got a lot of new details from that. But, it seems to me that it would almost be impossible for her to have done it. And, it's possible a friend was driving the car, but I don't buy that either, because then you have to believe that she drove up here in a damaged vehicle and nobody questioned her.
And so that was most of what James added to the conversation up there. It was a respectful conversation. These guys aren't buddies. They're not. They don't really even particularly like each other, I would say. So the fact that they had such a cordial interaction was pretty nice. I think James mentions really the questions that he wants to ask Fred Murray.
Yeah, I think he probably had a list of. I think I can get in like 2 or 3 questions today. So what are my most important ones? And it was good to hear that he got some resolution on the Vassie accident. I'd say he's fairly certain she had nothing to do with it. And it was also surprising to hear that people who were in attendance didn't know about that, about the Vassie accident. I don't want to get into the Vassie accident because, we've talked about that a lot. I think and that's why I'm surprised that people didn't know that was something that was a factor in this whole case.
But it is good to mention, I know we haven't really mentioned it, that the Amherst police did release the information. So it does sound very unlikely that the Patrice Vassie accident had anything to do with Maura Murray or her car. So that is good to rule out.
Exactly. That's the point. Yep. Rule things out. I did like the question about the $4,000 because that's something that's been out there, and that's been the subject of a lot of speculation. And as far as we know, that money was put into a bank account, but John does do a little bit of spin there by saying that he doesn't know, saying that Fred is an old school guy who carries a lot of cash on him at all times, and he kind of backtracks and spins around a little bit, probably just because maybe he didn't think that this was such a big deal at the time, so he didn't look into it so much with Fred. Maybe his relationship with Fred is at a point where it would be insulting for him to ask. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here. But he definitely spins around a little bit on the $4,000 and then changes the subject.
And also about the Sarah Alfieri story about the party before the crash that Maura had with her dad's car. Yeah, we don't know this either, of course. John has stated he doesn't know it. James, this is one of his most lingering questions as well. And Sarah has reportedly told it to Fred, but she's also reportedly told it to the police, which to me says, well, okay, if the police didn't solve it with whatever this information is, then I don't think we're gonna. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my feeling on it.
Yep, and you can take what Renner says as very mysterious as far as her statement goes. I told my story to Fred. I told the real story to Fred. Is that what it was? I told the real story to Fred, and that's the last I'm going to say of it. It's all in how that's delivered. It might not have even been the real story. She could have just said something simply like, I told Fred what happened, and that's it. I'm done. Because she's talking to James Renner, who she doesn't know, who she researches and has, at that time, a small blog and a couple of books from publishing companies that she's never heard of. So if someone like that came to my house, I would say, hey, I've already told my story to the girl's dad, and I'm not going to talk to you. And, that person could walk away and say, well, there's something missing there.
And there could be.
There could be, but...
And John says that. There could be. But we don't know that there is at all. So that was one of the more interesting moments, I think, up there. Here is where someone asks John Smith what the Murray family actually thinks happened to Maura. And I think that's pretty interesting. And then we hear from Brian Flagg, who is with the North Country News up here in the White Mountains. And he's former law enforcement and is now...
I believe he owns the North Country News. And earlier on in this episode, I mentioned that people up there, they can be really, really, really genuine. And when you see him talk, that's the example that I was talking about. He is a really genuine person. He tells a story about Fred here. Really, really quick story, but you just see him talking. There's no reason for this guy to embellish at all on that.
Okay, we'll roll the clip.
Actually, I have a question. Does the family believe, before you get off, does the family have a belief that she's actually passed, or do they have a sense of a belief? Where's their belief?
They're 99% sure
That she's passed. That's what I was wondering.
They do not. They just don't believe it. They just don't believe that after 12 years that she could stay gone missing this long if she was alive and of her own,
Right.
and on her own free will, that she was out doing what she was doing. They just don't feel that she could go this long and not call somebody.
Right.
Because it's tough to go out and make new friends.
But we've seen cases where that has happened.
Right. Of course we have. Yeah. So it does happen. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the dynamics of their family. I mean, yeah, every family has issues. Gonna say that for sure. But I don't know the dynamics of her family. I don't know how, she would react in this situation. I don't know if all of a sudden she'd get up here and she could just go, I'm done with it. Like you quit smoking, I'm done with it. It's over. I'm never touching them again. Could be that way with her family. I don't know. I'm not going to say it didn't happen.
I spent a lot of times in the woods with Fred, and,
But
if he's just a very emotional man of something like that. I mean, I remember searching in Warren with him one weekend, and we came across a blue top underneath something, and I mean, you just saw the whole change in his demeanor. The tears started. He actually turned away and walked away, and he says, "We better check that." Yeah. And I'm like, so. We checked it. I checked it, but thankfully it was nothing. But you could just see. I mean, for a guy that if something was going on with that family, there's just no way he would have reacted that way. Just absolutely no way. Fred is a pretty genuine person.
Oh yeah.
They may have their skeletons like everyone else, but I mean, he's a genuine, emotional guy, down to earth. Have fun. You can have a beer with him. You can, I mean, he's just a great guy.
Very visual story from Brian Flagg about the tarp and Fred Murray's reaction to the tarp and not being able to look under it, and it's very sad to hear. You can almost hear the emotion transferred in some strange way. Just picturing it in your head is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, and exactly, you can hear the emotion transferred to Brian, because I can't even imagine being there and being next to Fred and being the person who's looking at a tarp, and I'm gonna pull this tarp up, and if I do and there's something underneath it, I'm the person that found this body that is the guy, this person standing next to me, it's his daughter.
And am I happy about that or not happy about that?
Exactly. What do I do? It's really easy for us to sit here and talk about what we might do, but I couldn't imagine being in that situation and putting my hand on that tarp and not knowing what's going to be underneath when I pull it up. One thing that I wanted to talk about, it started to feel to me that this was the point of the day where I feel like John just started to get a little bit exhausted. Not exhausted, but I feel like he was drained. I feel like he was expended to a pretty significant point where a lot of the things that he started to say, he was kind of choosing words that might contradict what he said in the past, like saying, I don't know the dynamics of the family. That kind of contradicts what he said before. He does know, they were buddies. He knows the dynamics of the family. He's been a friend of Fred, according to him, for 12 years. How do you not know the dynamics of the family at that point?
Well, he doesn't know how the family interacted before Maura went missing.
I agree that he might not know, but I don't want to say that he's making things up. It's just something that stood out to me. He said, I don't know the dynamics of the family, yet we've been hearing from him for a long time that I'm good friends with the family. It's been, I know people, I know people for half that time, and I know the dynamics or I could speak confidently on the dynamics of their living situation or their family.
I hear what you're saying in normal terms, a friend or coworker or something like that, but we don't have any way other than Fred's word to know what their family dynamic was, at this point, or other people who knew them closely at the time. But John didn't.
Yeah, and honestly, like I don't really even know why I brought that up, other than when I was listening to it and I listened to it again and listened to it for a third and fourth time. That just always kind of stuck out a little bit to me, where he said, "I don't know the dynamic of the family," other than it struck a chord in me that I can't really identify right now.
And here is the next clip.
I've been there so many times, and the traffic on that road is nuts. People drive like crazy on that road. I've almost been hit a few times myself taking pictures and stuff.
Yes, but when you say that to somebody who lives down in Massachusetts or Connecticut or something, there could be 3 cars in an hour, or there could be, when you say it's a heavily traveled and everyone's going fast, that's in a matter of perspective.
Right.
Because there could be 20 cars in 20 minutes, and there could be 3 in an hour, or 2 in an hour,
Because that's what I've noticed. I've noticed like you're either standing there and 1 car goes by, or you're standing there and 20 go by. Like today was like, what did we see today? There was a lot of cars that went by, How many went by on that night at 7:30 on that night, February 9th, 12 years ago? We don't know. Butch Atwood said maybe 3 or 4.
One thing that stood out to me that the guest in the Mountain Lakes Lodge said was that everything is you have to put it into perspective, like it's all relative. He could be saying that it's busy up there, and busy up there means 3 cars, and busy somewhere else, maybe in a more I don't know, active neighborhood. Busy could be 20 cars, but although I think that was a good point that she brought up. I don't really find that to be that relevant. The thing that was kind of relevant to what they were talking about was how John was saying that people drive fast through there. Did he say they drive like crazy through there?
He did.
You really don't even have to drive like crazy through there. It's such an area, especially at night. If you're going the speed limit and you come around that corner and you're just kind of driving, you just kind of you just. Because I could see how you could be kind of lulled into a state of hypnosis, like driving hypnosis going through there. The river's there. You're kind of going around the corners. It's, kind of rocking you a little bit. You can come around that corner and someone could be standing there and you could be going 20 miles an hour and almost hit them. I don't really think that speed has anything to do with it. It's just a very interesting area. It's a very interesting corner.
20 miles an hour around that corner would feel fast, I think.
Yeah, once you get into the corner.
It's basically a hairpin turn.
Yeah.
And there are no streetlights, and it is pitch black. How dark is it up there on the street at night? We've been there on the street at night.
Sure. If there isn't any lights on in the houses around there, then
or cars coming,
you'd have a hard time. You'd have a hard time navigating seeing your hand in front of your face. I mean, I'm exaggerating for the point of like emphasis, but
not by much.
Not by much. Yeah, it is dark. I did enjoy watching and listening to John's stage presence and his awareness of the room. He brought that conversation back to the night of the accident by saying, and who knows how many cars were driving by the night of the accident. So he's always focused on that.
Yeah, and as far as the amount of cars, it is really tough to say how many cars could go by. We've been there for a few minutes, and there's no cars. We've also been there another chunk of time, and there'd be 5 cars in a minute, and that feels like a lot. So it's really, you can't say.
Monday night, right after people are getting out of work, and I'm assuming that people don't work right down the street there. So no one rides the public transportation system going on in Haverhill. So there could have been up to a dozen or 24 cars going through the night of the accident. We don't know, but there's probably, that's an interesting thought. There's probably a lot more witnesses of the accident than we've encountered.
Right, because if that's true, that what Butch said, there's 3 or 4 cars or so that went by, then that's 3 or 4 witnesses, and maybe one of them is the car that Maura got into, if that is what happened.
I would love to know. I'd love to know if anybody up there, if anybody's listening, happened to be one of those cars, and they just haven't come forward because they didn't think that it would be relevant. But you never know. You never know what might jog loose in your memory.
And here is the next clip.
Well, I think, John, I think you really have done a great job on this, and we've talked on, I don't know how many occasions, whether it be here, the coffee shop or whatever, and, I think talking back and forth, we both brought up good points over the years and stuff, and I just appreciate, what you're doing for the family.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank
I
you
think you're
very
doing a
much.
good job.
That's appreciated. And after meeting with Fred that day on Sunday, Julie, who I've never spoken to before, actually got in touch with me on Facebook and said that she had talked to her father, and that they wanted me to know how much Helena and Fred think about what I'm doing, and how much they appreciate it. And that, that certainly helps me, after 12 years to at least feel a little good, bit good that I'm doing something right. I'm not just, pedaling against the
I
tide.
remember sitting at the coffee shop over in Franconia with you one day. You and I were just talking about the Murray family, and who comes in? Fred. Tick-ridden, ticks all over him,
Yeah.
comes in, wants a
Yeah,
cup of
we were
coffee,
picking
he was
ticks
out in the
up.
woods.
That's right.
So, I mean, it just, the guy he's going in the woods and he's still searching. I mean, you got to give a family member a lot of credit for that.
That right there is my favorite moment from the afternoon of the 9th because of how visual it is. And to picture Fred Murray walking into a coffee shop and happen to bump into John and Brian up there, and Fred it comes in covered in ticks from searching.
So that was Brian Flagg speaking from the North Country News, former police officer. A couple of things that strikes me about that story. One, yes, how visual it is. And two, I would imagine that it takes a lot of ticks for somebody else to even notice how many ticks are on you, right? I mean, ticks are pretty small. They embed themselves in your skin. No one's going to see like one or two. Some people might not even comment if you have like 6, and usually they're on your legs, so generally they don't all collect in one spot. I mean, he must have had a lot of ticks on very visual, very obvious spots of his body. Just the amount of ticks that must have been on him is very impressive to me. That means he's like deep in there, deep in the woods, coming in, going in to a place where there's like clearly ticks. If he's wearing shorts, then they see it on his legs or they see it on his neck, meaning that he's like up, like, just in dense woods.
Yeah, that is a good question. How many ticks is covered in ticks, especially when, you just meet someone for a few minutes? It's a really good question. I just pictured 3 automatically because that's more than 2. You would have said a couple or something, but you're probably right. It's probably much more than 3.
I know it sounds like we're kind of talking about something that might seem irrelevant at this time, but yeah, it's not. It just shows that if he walks in and they're having coffee and they notice ticks on his body, that means he's been trudging. And he probably knows better. He's probably wearing pants. He's probably not wearing shorts. So they're probably on his neck. And then they see one and then they realize, oh, well, there's another one and there's another one and there's another one. I mean, he's in there up to his elbows, He's bushwhacking through these dense woods. For what? If it's a ruse, then, the guy is so dedicated, which, I'm not buying that.
And here is the next clip.
Yeah, that's another thing about this case. I don't know how many people, are into the psychic realm or whatever, but I've dealt with a lot of psychics since I first started this. And this case has followed me, haunted me, drawn me back in, and just will not let me go. And I was a chef for 21 years. I'm obsessive compulsive. I just got that. I tear apart equipment. I want to fix stuff. That's me. I want the fix. I want it done. I want it fixed. And that's why I just can't let go of this case. And everything just keeps drawing me back into it. Like I kind of let it go, and I got a job as the Wolfman at Clark's Trading Post. Okay, and I walk into Clark's Trading Post. Who works there but Tim and Faith? Okay, so it's like, oh, here they are again. And when I went to Exit 41. Rick Forcier's ex-wife, who lived on the corner, she was there. She was our secretary. Who starts coming in to get his tools repaired by me? Rick Forcier, one of the people that's been looked at in this case. So this is what I deal with. This is the stuff that just keeps coming to me, and it's like it just won't let me go. And so that's why I'm here. I can't let it go. So probably till the day I die, just like Fred.
John quite literally states that this case is haunted, or at least has haunted him over the years and will not let him go. I know John has specifically told me he thinks it's Maura that is keeping him involved. And for the sake of some closure in this case, I hope he's right.
Like the spirit of Maura, or the idea of Maura, or the energy of Maura, all of the above.
One of those, I don't know.
Just haunting him.
Yeah.
It's not dissimilar to what James Renner has said about a darkness. It grabs you in a different way, also in a very typical way. But it kind of like, I feel like it kind of preys on what you. It preys on your personality. It follows John as it haunts John as like a driving way. He said that he likes, taking something apart and fixing it. If a piece of machinery or a tool is broken, he'll try to fix it until it's fixed. That's him being haunted by it. Maybe with James Renner, the darkness is because, on James's blog, he's put it out there. He's had a pretty dark past. He's had some pretty dark things that have happened to him and his family, and maybe the residual effects of that make him see it as a darkness, whereas the residual effects for John make him see it as a compulsion. But ultimately, why I said it wasn't dissimilar is they can't live without the solution. They can't live without the conclusion. And both of them have motives pointed in different directions. We won't get into that right now, but what brings them there, I think, comes a lot from where they've been personally in their life.
I think a lot of it has to do with intention. I think you need to have as pure of an intention as you possibly can in getting involved in this if you want to help, and if you don't want to be haunted, or I don't know if that's even an option, to be honest. I think it's sort of haunted in a good way, sort of in the way that John Smith is kind of claiming he's being haunted. He's just not being let go as far as being able to forget about the case and move on with his life.
Yep. Pure intention is probably the most preferable way to go, because you're seeing it with a little bit more of like clear eyes than a selfish intention.
You have to have as clear of an intention as possible as well. And I think, Lance, for you and I, since we've sort of hit a little bit of a turning point in the run of this podcast at some point, I don't even remember when or where it was or why it happened specifically, but when we focused on pure intention, basically, and not so much documenting the characters or trying to ruffle feathers maybe or get interviews, it turned into, well, let's see if we can actually solve this. I feel like we've had a lot more positive things happen to us in looking at this. And Totally. It feels better, I know, for me, doing it this way, at least understanding what I'm doing in this, like what my role is here. My intention, to me, is now clear.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Because if you have, even if you're not sure what your intention is, you start to get nervous. You start to get nervous about what, if you're right, and then you get nervous if you're wrong. You question every move that you make. And again, getting back to the area up there, that area is going to draw off of whatever the most prominent energy or emotion you have when you go up there. If you go up there with this darkness around you, or this selfish intention, something that's not a clear, pure intention, then you're going to see the darkness up there. You're going to feel the claustrophobic feeling, and you're going to be looking for that. And if you go up there with a pure intention, I feel like you will see things as they are. It's not, that doesn't mean that you won't be safe. It doesn't mean that you're going to just like la-di-da go through the woods and you'll be fine, but you'll see from all angles what might be coming. It's also really that area, getting back to that claustrophobic feeling, how John got the job at Clark's Trading Post, and Tim and Faith Westman work there, and Rick Forcier comes in, and, needs his tools repaired, and how this thing is surrounding him. And he says haunting, but what John said about it haunting him and he can't seem to get away from it, it's part of a theory that was kind of a joke at first in my head, or something that I lightly took as a theory that just kind of grew bigger and bigger as it started to prove itself. If you were to read, and I think I mentioned it when we talked with the Generation Y guys, but I don't think I said where the origin of it is. So this nylon sock theory, if you read Stephen King's book, one of his later books in the past 5 years, 11/22/63, about the Kennedy assassination and about time travel, he talks about time travel being like trying to fight out of a nylon sock or a nylon prison. And no matter how much you try to like punch or pull or rip your way out, you're still sucked into this nylon sock or prison. And it's impossible to get out, and you're only exhausting yourself if you do. And that's what time is. And I feel like that's what this case is. And I feel like that's what that area is. This giant nylon sock. John's up there, he's in it, and he can't get out of it. And no matter what he does, random job at Clark's Trading Post, random opportunity comes up, and Tim and Faith Westman are there. He wants to fix tools, and Rick Forcier comes in. I know it's a small town, and I know that everyone probably knows everybody, but, well, to be honest, he's at Clark's Trading Post. What are the odds that Tim and Faith Westman come in? And I know you and I, Tim, when we've gone up there, it's a number of issues that we deal with that are unexpected. Audio equipment just suddenly frying out, not working when you got to rent audio equipment. The lightning storm from the other night. Maybe you're just kind of looking at things and saying that, well, you're kind of, you're being dramatic, or you're connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. But again, getting back to that area, and this case, there is a certain energy that will follow you.
You're absolutely right with the audio equipment. There's something that always will malfunction, seemingly not user error for us. Every time I've been up there, something weird happens. Maybe almost every time, I will say, to the crash site and that area. It's every time I've gotten a spooky feeling, I'll tell you that. But not every time it's been very strange or what I would describe as a crazy experience in my life. That has happened a couple times, but not quite every time, but almost every time.
Yeah. I just feel like when we go up there, we got to fight for everything. We got to fight for everything that we get. And again, yeah, you said it. It's not because of user error. It's not because we said, oh, shit, we forgot the field recorder. No, the field recorder, which was working perfectly the day before, is now completely dead. These things that come up, and it could be anything, but you just start to see it a little differently when you're this far in.
And one time I remember when we got out of the car at the accident site, we just started hearing gunshots every few minutes, and it was hunters nearby, but really kind of put you on edge right off the bat.
Yep.
To further back up what we're talking about right now, John goes on to talk about some of the other strange deaths or murders in the area.
Once Brianna Maitland went missing on March 19th, 2004, 5 weeks after Maura did, the FBI got involved after that because everyone was trying to say that we were putting them together and that they were combined cases. And FBI came in and ruled all that out. No, there is no serial killer. And I'm not saying there is a serial killer, but we do have to admit that the Connecticut River Valley Killer was out and about for many, many years, and that goes all up and down Route 91, okay? From Haverhill south, where all these bodies were found and where people were
Well, it was
attempted
quite
abductions.
south of Haverhill.
Yeah,
It was actually
the
down.
Lebanon area, Lebanon.
Right, Lebanon on down.
So, a lot in like Heartland, Vermont and stuff like that. These girls were found in swamps and stuff and everything. A lot of those have never been proved. If you want just another little thing to throw out there, Pauline Clark was found in this stream out here in the early 80s, dead. Right in that stream over there. Suspicious circumstances, to say the least. They said that she fell into the brook. Or no, that she fell into the brook upstream and washed down. This was in July. If you go over and take a look at that stream, it's not going to wash a 120-pound body down a stream, okay?
Even in the springtime, it's not
Even in
very
the spring.
flooded. No,
So
not enough to wash a body down.
you have that, and then you have the fact that her purse was found 150 feet upstream, okay? It's just another case of weirdness that doesn't make any sense, and that happened in this little town, this little hamlet of Haverhill, New Hampshire. We have Tom Conrad, who was shot to death in his driveway in Piermont.
Pike.
What's that?
Pike.
Pike, I'm sorry, Pike. We have the kids who killed the Gray boy, okay? Christopher Gray, okay? So bad elements exist in every town, every state. I'm not saying that it's just New Hampshire, because it's not, you know, and people think that's what I'm saying when I say, I'm from here, I'm 57 years old, I'm a local. And do you think I like talking about my area like this? No, I don't. Because New Hampshire, live free or die, I love it here. I love New Hampshire. But I will not sit back and let this stuff happen and not do something about it, because it is where I live. And I don't want this crap happening in my backyard. And being a former police officer, as well as you know, it puts a bad light on us. Whether I was a cop 30 years ago or not doesn't matter to me. Because now when I tell people, oh, you're a cop, you know, I don't want, you know, you say, oh, wow, you used to be a cop? That's cool. No, now it's like, oh, you used to be a cop.
I don't even tell people anymore.
I know, isn't that sad? See, that's sad. That's sad. You should be proud. We should be able to be proud of what we did to serve our community. And the fact that it's hard to say that now because we will be ridiculed really does hurt. Really does hurt.
A lot went into that clip. You know, it was sort of a lot of cases all at once. So what did you make of that clip, Lance?
Yeah, a lot of information really fast, too. A lot of peripheral information went into that exchange that John had with Brian in that clip. A lot of cases were mentioned. The Brianna Maitland case was mentioned. I know a lot of people wanted, you know, there is a very legit reason why you would want to look into that as a connection. The timing, the circumstances, our hair on the back of your neck rises. It's like obviously connected when you first read about it. When you first see the pictures of both of these cases, there's no question in your mind. These are related when you first look at it. I don't know. I haven't looked into the Brianna Maitland case nearly as much as I should as a connection to this. I think my gut tells me that it's a separate incident. As he's talking about it, you know, with all of these cases, and it's almost like a brain dump in a way. And then I can't even imagine how exhausting this must be for somebody who lives in the area, and he loves the area. Somebody who lives in the area is proud to be there, and he's working on this case, and then he starts to see all of these other things, all these other occurrences that happen, these crimes, these unsolved murders, these disappearances. It's got to be insanely exhausting for somebody to keep looking into these things. And the next bad thing that comes up, or the next bad thing that he finds, he references Pauline Clark, right? And in the brook that's right at the lodge. It's definitely unrelated to the Maura case, but it's something, as you're looking into the Maura case, you find this, and then you look into that. You look into Brianna Maitland.
Tommy Conrad. You start going crazy.
You start thinking that all of these, you start actually trying to connect the dots on all of these cases. And yeah, he loves the area, and he doesn't like talking bad about the area, and he's a strong-willed person saying, you know, this is happening in my home, this is happening in my backyard, and I'm not going to let it happen. I'm going to keep fighting. But it goes back to what we were talking about at the end of the last episode and the beginning of this episode, that maybe you don't have a choice. The old man in the mountain fell off. Bad things are going to happen here.
He texted me after the first part of this aired, and John asked me if he was too hard on certain people. And I said, I don't know. I mean, you said what you wanted to say that day. And someone's got to say this stuff.
Eventually. I mean,
someone has to ask these questions.
Yeah, or else it's going to be 24 years later. And then it's going to be, 36 years later. And, we'll be up there and Jesus, I hope I'm not going to be, 60 up there trying to still figure this thing out on like my hoverboard or something. I also find it really interesting that they didn't elaborate, and they had a little bit of a laugh. They didn't elaborate why they're not proud to say that they're police or former police officers anymore. That's something that I think I didn't actually notice until we listened to the clip. I definitely didn't notice it when we were up there. We had a couple of, we were trying to record. We were trying to make sure everything was right technically. I remember that moment when they were talking about, you should be proud to be a former police officer. I just wonder why it just kind of went without saying, They both said to each other, and now you'd never want to, admit to doing something like that, to admit to being a former police officer. It just seems curious to me. And then they never elaborated because it seemed like it was like an understood thing.
Well, I think the country is exploded with officers shooting people who are running or people who are unarmed, and it has been very controversial, especially in the past year or two, more than ever, at least more so than I can ever remember.
Sure.
So I think that's probably what they were talking about.
Something on the more topical level.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here in this next clip, we get a story from one of the guests at the lodge who tells a story about her daughter and how she left the scene of an accident.
It amazes me, and I put this on the Facebook page, that 7 years later, my daughter's in a similar accident, not even a mile down the road from where Maura's car was found, and almost identical circumstances. And I was out of state, it was my car. They went over to the river and looked for her briefly, and they towed my car to Lavoie's, and I wasn't contacted for 2 days. And why 7 years later they weren't doing a better job at, pursuing a car that they thought had a female in it. I'm glad I live in Bath and not North Haverhill, because I think they dropped the ball.
There's a difference between a half-done job and a cover-up.
Right. But I think they've covered up their half-assed job.
Well, there you go.
And you're supposed to hope that with time, everyone gets better. Practice makes perfect,
Well,
okay?
7 years later, they
But
should
7
have
years
been
later, what are they practicing, to keep screwing up? To not take this seriously?
I'm going to be honest, when she first started talking about a similar accident with her daughter, I almost got a little, I got kind of a little nervous. I got a little annoyed, I'll be honest. I got a little annoyed because I didn't want it to be this kind of a relevant story where she just kind of wanted stage time. But it turned out to be quite the opposite. When she, similar accident, they kind of did a quick search of the water and then called. She said she didn't know until 2 days later. Just seems like there's a laissez-faire type attitude amongst the law enforcement there. I think it was pretty revealing and telling when she said she's glad she lives in Bath and not North Haverhill. I don't know if this is something that's happened, do they have a reputation for this? Did it start with Maura, or was there something going on before?
I don't know if we played the very end of that clip where she explained what happened, but her daughter was okay. And here is the next clip.
Why did they not go east of that Bath sign that night? Because, as stated in the accident report, it says car was headed east on Route 112, ended up westbound in the eastbound lane.
I would think they cut it off there because it's dark. As soon as you get past Cole's house, Bradley Hill, there's no lights.
Right.
So they probably just said, oh, well, she wouldn't have gone down there. In my opinion, that would have been the first place she would have gone to hide.
If she was trying to hide, which they know there was alcohol, and if she was headed east, maybe she would keep going east. If she was especially trying to get away, she wouldn't go back towards...
And even if she was familiar with the area, she didn't know the exact layout. So she wouldn't have known that past Bradley Hill there aren't any houses, there are like 5 houses for the next 23 miles, and there are no street lights, there's no lights, period.
Yeah, it's a good question. Did they just not go that way because they didn't think she went that way?
Right.
It makes no sense of why you wouldn't at least go look that way. You know, it's
At least drive
especially
down
the
to
state
Buffalo
cop,
and turn around, right?
especially the state police officer, because that is his job now. Because Bath, New Hampshire, well, they do have police coverage up until whatever, depending on the day. I think it's midnight or something.
We're on
but
call, though.
but
We've
on
been
on call. But more than likely, rather than call him out, if state police was there,
Right.
John Monahan should have taken and gone east and looked for Maura Murray, and he didn't. And that's one of Fred's biggest things. Says, why did they not go east? And we know that John Monahan didn't go east because he was seen by the red truck witness. He was seen by her after she had left the store. So it was after 8 o'clock when he was closing up the store that she saw him, and he pulled over to say, you know, are you Maura Murray? And he realized, oh, hi, well, you know, it's not Maura. And she said, hi, John.
Was he in an official vehicle or?
He was in his official vehicle.
Oh.
Yeah.
She knew him very well, so it was,
Oh,
because he was, Monahan was the one that was at her family's accident. Daughter's accident.
Yeah. So, yeah, why did they go east?
The woman who witnessed the red truck slow down and look at her, and she's also the same woman who witnessed John Monahan on the scene about 8 o'clock asking her if she's Maura Murray.
I'm not sure if it was on the scene, though, and we can keep
Well,
this going.
at the Swiftwater Lodge, or right there, the Swiftwater shop.
That whole clip is a little bit confusing to me. She sees the red truck. She goes to the Swiftwater Stage Shop, which is the store I believe he's referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it was around 8 o'clock and he was closing up the store.
Yeah, this would have been after the red truck.
Right. I'm just wondering why.
Yeah.
Why is he closing up the store?
Not him. It was her friend that this witness was speaking to at the store.
Okay. And then she saw John
Monahan slowed down and asked her.
I'm
She
sorry.
had two cars slow down and ask her.
I'm sorry,
Basically, look at her if she was Maura Murray.
And we're saying they didn't go east because that direction is west.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we know
about 8
if
o'clock.
it's 8 o'clock? How do we know he didn't go east before 8 o'clock?
Based on this clip, we don't know that.
If he did, he didn't go very far, because they probably wouldn't have started looking until about 7:45 or 7:50. He wouldn't have had time to go that far and then come all the way back. I'm glad we cleared it up because they deliver the information because each of John and the guest each know what the other is talking about. So I feel like some things are kind of like quickly said or kind of dropped. So yeah, it wasn't John Monahan closing the store. It was her friend after the red truck. She's at the store and John Monahan pulls up and briefly mistakes her, or not mistakes her, but
Just
briefly
asks
doesn't
her and then
recognizes her.
realizes. Mm-hmm. And then they happen to know each other. So she knew for a fact that it was him.
Also it's still a little, the guest in the audience reference that they knew each other very well.
Well, that he was the officer at her daughter's accident. So I would presume that to mean, maybe not very well, but presume that to mean they at least know each other by first name on site.
So the interesting thing about this is that it was never put out there, or it was denied that John Monahan was even there.
Right.
At all.
Right.
State police officer being at the scene of the accident on Monday night, but yet on Wednesday morning, when I got there, I heard about the accident Tuesday. The director of the state police said Wednesday was the first they heard of it. Now, how can that be when they had their own officer at the scene?
And so Fred looks at that as, well, that's a lie because your guy, John Monahan, was there. And with that said, it really is curious to me why East hasn't been searched, and even why when we go up there, we just stop at the crash site. What are we doing? Why don't we go east? I mean, I know we're gathering footage, but maybe for a future day, if we're talking about maybe organizing a search party or something, let's go east.
On that point, why doesn't anyone talk about Old Peters Road? Everyone talks about Bradley Hill Road. Old Peters Road is literally the road that is right there where the little dirt road that has homes on it. No one ever says that it would make sense for her to run down there. I'm wondering if I'm missing something.
No, I'm with you. And if you're there on the site and everyone who goes there kind of says it, it's like, well, if this happened to me and I'm trying to get away, that's the place you run. You don't go into the woods because of the snow tracks. You have to stay on the road. You go up that road, dirt road.
Yeah,
You don't get to run down the main road.
You get out of your car, you take a left, and you disappear down Old Peters Road. It's just, why does everyone say Bradley Hill Road?
We talk about Faith Westman not noticing Maura vanishing from thin air right in front of her as she's on the phone, but Maura could have run up Old Peters Road in 20 seconds and been out of Faith's sight in less than that, actually.
Absolutely.
Based on that, because of the angle of the window.
And it's dark.
Oh, it's pitch black.
Yeah. She's got to duck down and been down Old Peters Road in half a second.
Yeah. So that could be a good answer. I mean, really, like east or up there. I know searches have been there. They've searched a 5-mile radius from the crash site, but Maura could have easily run past 2.5 miles.
Yeah,
east. I mean, and that's if she didn't go up Old Peters Road, which we're saying is probably what we would have done if we were in that position and kind of having a little bit of a freak out moment.
I know you're saying a freak out moment, so you're not, people are going to say, well, you're not thinking clearly, but you're still thinking enough to know that you're going to run. Your
survival instinct.
Yeah, exactly. You know you're going to run. So, you run against traffic on the road, or you turn down. I just wonder why no one has ever. You hear Bradley Hill all the time. And that's just never made sense to me. Old Peters Road is what makes sense to me if someone wants to get a quick getaway. And did the police ever go down Old Peters Road? Knock on doors?
Not that night that I ever heard of. And the A-frame house is not right down that street, actually. I know a lot of people might listen to this and say, oh, well, the A-frame house, she probably just went there and never left. And maybe that's true about the A-frame house, but it is not right up Old Peters Road right there.
She did not run and accidentally find the A-frame house. Maybe. I don't know.
It would be unlikely because it was west towards the Swiftwater stage shop, and then you got to take a left, and it's a windy road, as we discussed in the last episode. It's right near the Mountain Lakes Lodge. There are literally abandoned houses up Old Peters Road that is a lot closer to the accident site than the A-frame house is.
I feel silly even talking about her running to the A-frame house, like happening upon it. Because right across the street is the lodge.
I just wanted to clarify and give people a better idea of the geography. And here is the next clip.
They toned the police out at 7:29 or 7:27. He was en route at 7:29. They did not call out fire department and EMS until 13 minutes later. That makes no sense because you want the police to get there. And until the police gets there and go, oh, don't worry about it. There is no person at the car. There's no leakage. Don't worry about even coming this way. But they waited 13 minutes and then they did tone him out. And they did tone him out before he arrived there. So maybe there was just some other calls going on, but they're not on the log. So why did they wait that 13 minutes to call them out? EMS arrived on scene at 7:56. Fire department arrived on scene at 7:57, within a minute of each other. Those guys got to the scene in less time than it took Cecil Smith to get there. It took Cecil Smith 17 minutes to arrive at the accident scene. It took them 11 or 12 minutes, I think.
Was Lavoy chief of fire department then?
Yes, he was. Yep. So fire department came. Fire department was there for a long time. Dick Guy, the EMS, came up and said to them, he's the one who noticed the rag in the tailpipe. And he's the one that said it to them. And that was when they told EMS, see you later. EMS was on the scene. Even though Maura wasn't there, there wasn't a person there for them to worry about. How could they have made that decision to release EMS in 6 minutes? EMS was on scene. They didn't have another call to go to. They were headed back to the...
Just because there wasn't a body in the car.
Right, but still,
right.
It was right after he mentioned the towel in the tailpipe that they said, we don't need you here. And they told fire department and everybody to get away from the car.
Why wouldn't they be looking for the body? Why wouldn't they want
Why
those
wouldn't they be
extra
looking,
bodies
right?
there looking for
Yeah.
this missing body?
Yeah.
And that, I've read that, right, that they looked around, there weren't any footprints in the snow, which like, how could you ascertain that in a few minutes between Gene Crowley's house and Bradley Hill? I mean, there's
Well,
no
and
way.
if they only went to Butch Atwood's house, which is pretty much what we know, the next driveway down, it's Bath, and there's a house out behind Butch Atwood's, and it's the house. I've left 5 business cards on their door in the past 12 years. Never got a response.
I never see anybody.
You know where they're
It's very
from?
rare.
They're from Weymouth, Mass. They're from the same place Maura is from. Is it just a coincidence? I don't know. But if they didn't go that extra 50 feet, she could have walked into that driveway. She could have been in that driveway. She could have been up Bradley Hill. She could have been anywhere.
Based on some of the things that came out in that clip, I'm wondering if maybe the question about Lavoie being on the scene is due to the fact that he was the chief of fire at the time.
Right. And there was this fire meeting that was going on right at that time, right? So was he that close?
Maybe it came on the scanner and he just thought, hey, I'm going to go make a couple quick bucks, maybe get there beforehand.
Maybe, you know, he's like, Northland Towing doesn't have to do this one. Don't sweat it. I got it.
Yeah.
But I know that wasn't the attitude of Dick McKean from Northland Towing, who was a little bit upset about it, apparently.
Right. I'm just wondering if we're making too much out of it. Maybe
We very well could be.
Yeah, maybe because he's the chief of the fire department, he gets the call, or he gets he hears it on the scanner, you know, and just figures, hey, I'm close. I'm going to jump in the wrecker and head over there before McKean gets there. Could just be the competition that goes on with them.
Yeah, that was the first I had heard that he was the chief of fire. And here is the final clip from the afternoon.
We've found out a lot of information. The blog is working really good as far as I get emails every day from new people who have been giving us information, talking about this town, and just telling me stuff that just blows my mind. And, you know, to hear this now, after 12 years, I think people just finally are sick of hearing about it and they want answers as well. And that's my mission, is I want to clear this up. I want to have people know that they can trust their police, and I want to have people know that they can feel safe in their community. And when you don't, you know, that's horrible. That's a horrible way to have to feel, is that you can't feel safe, and that you know that people that are there that are supposed to be protecting you are possibly not. They have their own agenda. And it's them, you know, they're the agenda. You know, and they're above the law, and we're not above the law. You know, we work for you. Not me, but the police work for you. You pay their salaries every day. You buy those cruisers. You buy that police station, okay? And you have the right to know. That's the biggest thing, okay? They're not like a separate entity that we can't say da-da-da, you know. That's what you go to your meetings for. That's what you go to your things and say, no, we don't want you to have a new cruiser or whatever. You speak your mind. You speak your voice. Because that's, you know, that's what you're supposed to do.
Pretty appropriate way to end it.
Yeah, I really like the way he put it at the very end there. And there was a round of applause that broke out after the presentation, which was shortly after this, and everyone really just thanking John for doing what it is he has been doing. And so I just want to publicly thank him here as well, because it is pretty remarkable what he's been doing, and as he puts it, keeping Maura's name in the light, and it is something that is important. And again, someone needs to do this, and John is taking this burden on himself with, you know, the help of us and a lot of other people, but he is really on the front lines here.
Literally on the front lines. He literally is in that area, and at this point, I don't know where the line is, but it's too late to stop. It's too late to go back and do anything else. So I don't know what happened to Maura, but I do know that until something is reached, John will do this, and Fred will do this, and a number of other people will continue to do this until they can't do it anymore. So I don't know when that point is, where, you know, I don't know if there is a point where, you know, a line you draw and you say, you know, I can drop this and I can move on to something else and not feel like I've abandoned something that was important. And when you say, well, I can't possibly drop this now because I've come too far, and what good would it do anybody after gathering all this information and doing all this work? What good would it do if I just walked away?